Hey everybody, I'm Jammer here today with my video review for Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle for Nintendo Switch. Now, contrary to how previous reviews are, where there's a giant script, I go through every bullet point, I just nail it all, this is going to kind of be a little bit more off the cuff, kind of just going through more of a pros and cons list, just describing my experience with the game. I'm not entirely satisfied with my previous review format where I take all that time to write that review out and stuff. As well as I don't have much time to actually do this review, but I do want to talk about my experience with this game and just everything and my thoughts about it. So to get things started, I guess my background with strategy-based grid-type games, because obviously there's nothing like Mario Rabbids to be previous, in exception to XCOM, and it also shares some similarities to like games like Fire Emblem. So no, I've never played XCOM. I have played a handful of Fire Emblem titles, which I have enjoyed. I mean, I love Fire Emblem Heroes on mobile, but obviously that's a very different thing, but it's still kind of the same idea. And upon the initial reveal of this game, I was totally for it. I was down even when the leaks happened. I know a ton of people were against the idea, but I was positive. I'm like, you know what? Let's see what they can do. Let's see what Ubisoft and Nintendo can make and see if this is going to be great or not. Then from what I played at E3, I actually had a really good time going through the battles, the little tutorial area. It showed a lot of promise, and I was looking really forward to this game. So yeah, let's start off with some of the pros, first being the battles. The battles is definitely the focus of this game. The majority of gameplay seems to be you are in these battles. And how it operates is there's usually two in a row, and they kind of are quote-unquote linked together because your health is shared between these two battles, right? So you'll start one, and if you lose health throughout that battle, you'll carry over that health into the next battle. So basically you have to beat those two in succession, essentially. What's really cool, and I actually was very surprised how this was incorporated, was it's actually built into the overworld. So you're just exploring around, and all of a sudden, you walk into an area, and now that area becomes the battlefield. Rather than like Fire Emblem, where like you kind of just teleport to a battlefield. It kind of felt more like this world was alive, and like the battles weren't taking place in some, disconnected place, I really did enjoy the concept of, moving your units, jumping off each other to maybe go up on a higher platform or go farther, using your melee ability or your little like slide tackle to get some extra damage on an enemy here, to then try to strategically shoot him over there, especially when you're dealing with those one enemies with the big smashers, and if you ever shoot them or something like that, they'll start following you, but if you melee them, they'll stay in place, so it's really about strategizing like that, and making sure, I don't know, I think it worked out really well in that way. There's also a big layer of depth with weapon types, skill trees, and of course team building. Each weapon has like different elemental attributes. In order to activate those elemental attributes, you basically have to land a critical hit, and there's a % chance on each weapon that you have. Honey, for example, will stick an enemy in place. Push will actually push them and roll them back. Bounce or spring will make them bounce up into the air and go flying, usually always going to out of bounds for extra damage or even a kill. There's a handful of others, and it was really fun mixing and matching and choosing which ones you thought were best for the scenario. For a while, I kind of like just spreading it out and making each character have their own elemental type, so then I can have a good variety of different elements. But as I got farther in the game, I kind of noticed that some were better than others. Like, don't get me wrong, stone and ice, they're pretty good elements. They kind of block the opponent from being able to do stuff. But I found the elements that force the enemy to get out of where their cover is, like fire, bounce, and spring, to be some of the best in my opinion. Just because it forces the enemy to move, and then because of that, it either can knock, especially with spring and bounce, you can either knock them out of bounds and get some extra damage, or even the kill, or with fire, you can just at least get them out of where they were hiding, leaving them totally out in the open for you to take them out with another character of yours. I really enjoyed how unique each character was and their skill trees and their abilities. Like, for example, Rabbid Luigi had a really high melee attack, and it was all about vamp damage, which was like, every time you attack him, he would suck away health. Luigi, how he's kind of like a glass cannon. He could snipe from afar, do a ton of damage, but he also had like a really low health bar. Rabbid Mario, for example, where he's like the big burly tank guy. He can attract enemies towards him. He can use a damage buff barrier that's like insanely high %. He has that awesome melee hammer and stuff like that, and the shotgun that just sprays everything. And of course, these skills are then upgraded within their tree, and you can like make them, for example, dash multiple enemies in a turn, jump twice on a partner's head, like Luigi, or Mario has the ability where if you jump off a partner, you can jump onto an enemy's head then to do some extra damage. The list goes on, and I think this is like some of the best part of the game, because you can really play around with your team building and try to optimize to use the best characters, or basically make their stats the most optimal ways to really effectively work for your team. I guess the best way to put it is the characters are more than just an aesthetic. It's not like, oh, this is just Peach, you can give her whatever weapon and stuff like that. Or this is just Mario, and this is whatever, you can give them whatever ability you want. Each character is unique in that way, and kind of plays on their personalities, like Peach being healing and stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, it adds an extra layer of depth to strategy in this game that was really appreciated. The next thing I have to compliment is the graphics and the aesthetics. I have to say, it captured the Mushroom Kingdom and its characters very well. It kind of had that like toy aesthetic almost, which I really enjoyed. All the textures look really clean. I don't know, it was just a really pretty game to look at. It's weird to think that this is actually Mario's first adventure on the Switch, until obviously Odyssey comes out later in October. But I have to say, they did a great job, like I said, capturing the idea of the Mushroom Kingdom. Makes you really feel like you're in that world. And the story is pretty cute, too. I have to give it that, at least. Especially that intro cutscene. That was fantastic. While we're on the top of this, we're going to segue in to talk about some of the cons that I do have with this game. First of all being the weird animation loops. Now, of course, this isn't game-breaking. It's just an aesthetic thing. But during conversations and basically going through text and stuff like that, you'll notice that whenever it has to reset an animation loop or go into the next one, there really isn't any tweening, or there's some sort of bug there where basically it kind of, the character jitters and goes back to a weird starting frame that is different than the frame they're on when you click A or select through to the next menu option. This is something that I'm not entirely sure why this couldn't be fixed. Maybe it was some sort of bug. Perhaps we could see a patch later down the road to fix this. It's obviously not too big of a deal, but it is a little weird sometimes when you're seeing these, again, awesome aesthetics, awesome cutscenes, and then all of a sudden, like, they're kind of like being jittery with their animations when they have to reset them. Now it's time to get where I had my biggest complaint with the game. The battles, like, they were extremely difficult, and I never really found myself truly mastering the mechanics. I don't know if it's just me not understanding them well, or maybe I just don't have the skill. But I swear, I mean, I've had so many game overs throughout this game. It blows my mind that this is even supposed to be a game for kids, you know? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm totally fine with a good challenge. But I remember, like, the first mid-boss is finally when it really hit. I think I had over nearly 4 game overs, and on the 5th attempt, I won with, like, 1 person alive. Another example, on the World 2 boss, I game overed at least 4 times, I believe, wasting nearly an hour and a half of time making 0 progress. Finally just switched to easy mode, because I'm like, screw it, I just want to get this done with. And even then, I lost one of my characters, Peach, who had 500 HP at that point with the easy mode, and the other 2 were barely alive at the end. I feel like it might be a case of the game not really teaching the mechanics as well as other games might. Like, what I'm trying to say is, I mean, the difficulty scaling is fine in a game. It's supposed to get harder as the game progresses, because you're supposed to get stronger as the game keeps going. But I still feel like I'm fumbling my way through every match, and I'm not really effectively using each turn to its optimal strategies or whatever. Like, there are some bits and moments where, like, I totally pull off an awesome combo where, like, I jump off one character, get that person here, jump off that enemy, you know, go through this pipe, and that feels really good, but it doesn't happen as often as I'd like it to. It could come back to being skill-based. Maybe I just don't have the mindset to play a game like this. But I know in Fire Emblem, for example, I mean, I don't feel like I'm that incompetent. But when it comes to this game, I almost, like, dreaded going into the battles sometimes. Just because I knew I would do as terrible as I have been. Then, of course, building upon that, outside of the battles was the overworld. Essentially, it was supposed to be, like, a break between combat, giving you a chance to kind of get a rest, let you do some other stuff, and then you're ready to get into the next battle. Which is very important in a game like this, because if you're just in battle, it can kind of get fatiguing. I know it did in my case anyways. But the problem was, the overworld was almost even worse than the combat. I mean, it was just, I don't know, it was just boring. I mean, if you like those push-to-block puzzles from Zelda, I mean, you'll be a fan of this stuff, because there was a ton of that, where it was kind of just moving stuff around, and that was really all to it. There was little key points of interest where you could, like, peek in on the Rabbids doing something crazy, or, like, you know, shimmying up a POW block, or, like, sitting on a rubber ducky in the middle of a toilet or something. And I did that for a while at the beginning of the game, but it got to a point where I was like, well, I know they're doing something stupid, and Beebo or whatever will just say something funny. I just stopped even looking at it. I'm like, whatever, I don't really care about it anymore. And I don't really know what turned me off on it. I mean, don't get me wrong, there still is stuff to do in the overworld. There are plenty optional puzzles where you can, if you solve them, you can actually unlock better weapons, different 3D models and art and stuff like that. So there is meat and content within the overworld, and especially if you get abilities at the end of the chapter, you can go back into previous chapters and then unlock certain areas that you couldn't previously. There's even a secret stage you can unlock using these methods as well. And I see what they're going for, I really do. But there was nothing compelling me to go back to the other worlds and replay fights to get a perfect, or try to solve different puzzles to unlock different stuff. It just really didn't hook me. Now, I know I've been hurting on this game a lot in the past few minutes, but overall, I do have to say, I think the battles are a really good idea and concept. There is like that layer of depth, like I said, with the weapon types, the skill trees, all that stuff. And like I said, the graphics and like the toy-like aesthetic works really well, and it captures the Mushroom Kingdom like awesomely. But I felt like it was really overshadowed by the problems it had, being just the difficulty scaling, the game not really teaching the mechanics correctly. I just feel like that's a problem in the design department, that maybe they could have helped players learn the mechanics better, or, I don't know, make it more straightforward. I don't think the game necessarily needs to be easier. I just feel like you need a little bit of assistance to help use your tools more effectively. In the end, I have to say that I at least enjoyed this game. Maybe it's not for me, and I know a lot of you have been saying that you have been enjoying it so far, and I totally understand why. I can see the fun to have in this game. But it really got to a point for me where every time I would dread coming back to the game. The battles were just so punishing for me. Granted, you don't lose much after you lose, but I just felt like I wasn't making much progress because I kept game overing over and over and over. And then once I was outside of a battle, I was like, well, I don't want to push these blocks around. I just want to get back into actually playing the game, which was back to the combat, which again, it's just an endless cycle of just stuff. It wasn't really impressing me. Like I said, the battle concept is a good idea, and there are really in-depth layers of strategy and all the other collectibles and stuff, but I just have to say it wasn't for me. If you liked it, more power to you, that's fine, but just for me, I don't think it was just my type of game. But what did you guys think about Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle? Definitely let me know in the comments what your experience was on this game. Give this video a big awesome like, and if you haven't already, subscribe for a ton more on reviews and other Nintendo Switch content. Thanks again so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya!